I have been arrested for multiple crimes, including battery on a police officer, grand theft, declaring war on Italy, and public indecency. But during my time in prison, instead of physically fighting inmates, I would strategically drop the soap so that I would get brutally diddled instead of violently beaten up. However, unfortunately, a lot of people don't know about this strat. The most painful prison deaths ever by a talking hat.
Teeth. You get booked into prison, and the air feels heavier the second that steel door slams shut behind you.
Bro, okay, bro, stop. Do not jump scare me with that. Why was that so loud?
The cuffs come off, but all eyes are still on you. You look left to right, only to see inmates sizing you up like wolves around a wounded deer. The first week
are we going to just ignore that? P. Diddy is your next door neighbor in jail. What are you doing if the diddler himself is your next door neighbor? Me personally, I'm going to do the strat where I intentionally drop the soap so that I get brutally diddled instead of like brutally beaten by this guy. Because realistically, would you rather face this guy in a 1v1 physical fight or face this guy in a 1v1 freak-off?
The first week you're in there, you're purely fresh meat. From getting shoved in chow lines to getting tripped in the showers, you quickly find out that in prison showing weakness is an invitation to getting beat up.
Or
so you stop. You start doing push-ups until your chest is on fire and burpees until your vision blurs. Anything heavy that you can get your hands on, you quickly start lifting. As usual, the fights keep on coming. But for once, you finally win. A few months later, people know your name. Inmates begin nodding at you in the yard. Gangs start sending some of their guys to your cell not to beat you up, but to rather invite you to their group. As usual, you stay solo, but the respect, that's yours now. You've earned it, and everybody recognizes it.
You strong, we could use your muscles. Yeah, this is the average education system in the United States of America prison. Bro, realistically, if I received this letter from someone else in the prison inviting me to their gang, I would most likely have to politely decline. But at the same time, maybe they've been in so many fights and won so many fights that they've been, you know, knocked in the head so many times that their writing and their spelling and like everything has just gone to, you know, like this sort of level. So that could be a good sign or a bad sign, but I don't know. Like, if I received this letter, maybe I would reject their invitation.
It wasn't easy, but you've finally climbed the ranks of approval inside of the prison. One night, you come back to your cell and you can't help but to feel that something's off. You look inside, only to find a scrawny newcomer sprawled out on the top of the bed. Your bed. You've been locked up long enough to know that what this man is doing is one of the biggest signs of disrespect in the prison. But the man seems ignorant to the culture. He's half asleep with his head on your pillow, like he owns the place.
Hey, wake up.
Huh? Can't you see that I'm trying to catch some sleep?
Get the f*** off my bed.
Man, it's too early for this. Just buzz off.
What the frick did you just say to me? Did you tell me to buzz off? Nobody speaks to the Alpha Sigma male like that.
Everyone's watching. This is the biggest disrespect you've received in months, and you become enraged to a point where you finally decide enough's enough. You grab the scrawny man and rip him off your bunk bed, slamming him down to the floor in an instant. Without wasting a second, you begin swinging at him like it's no man's business. Inmates rush out from their cells and form a crowd between the two of you.
Whoa, what is that shadow doing? What is that shadow doing? That shadow is getting freaky with it. I think he just removed his pants and started doing the thug shaker from like above, like in the gallows. Is it called the gallows? No, it's not called the gallows. Okay, wrong thing. It's from like, what is that thing? Like when you're in the gulag and you're sort of looking down from above. He just whipped out his dingling and started shaking it and releasing his homemade special sauce all over the two contestants. And so the two people in this fight are gonna get completely oiled up, not with P. Diddy's oil, but with someone's homemade special sauce.
Excited to see the fight take place. Your fists connect over and over and cheers erupt around you from all types of prisoners. You lock him in a tight headlock with your muscles bulging. He's flailing aimlessly with snot and tears dripping from his eyes and nose. Gang leaders begin placing bets on who'll win the fight for fun, but it's obvious. You're winning easily. And then, it happens. A pain so sharp and blinding that it doesn't feel real. You really don't want to look, but you look anyways in pure disbelief. It wasn't just a gut feeling, your brain was right. The dude is literally biting your nut. You scream like a banshee. It's a sound you can't even recognize coming from yourself. But right now, you don't care. You begin to claw, punch, and bash on him, Unfortunately, however, you only find that the more you hit him, the harder the bite becomes.
Bro, what in the Hawk Tour is this dude doing? Like, that is the worst thing you could ever do in a 1v1 fight. Everyone knows that that is like against every single rule of a 1v1 fight. Why would you go for the nutsack? But to be fair, to be completely fair, this is literally the only thing this guy can do because he has no muscles, and so the only way to win is to play dirty.
Your punches turn into desperate pleas for him to stop. He doesn't listen. The crowd isn't cheering anymore, and even the veterans look sick. You begin begging for the guards to intervene, but by the time they rush in and rip him off you, it's too late. You're found convulsing on the floor, unresponsive, with life-threatening injuries. Medical staff does their absolute best to save you, into prison but you're broken in a way that can't be undone. This incident took place in Ghana during 2021. Both individuals got into an altercation that led to this shamelessly terrifying fight. The suspect that committed the crime was taken to court again, where he'd received judgment for his attack. But always remember to protect your jewels.
Bro, but I mean, are you meant to expect someone to try and literally bite off your dingaling during a 1v1 fight? I feel like that would be the last thing I ever expect in a 1v1 fight. That is just disgraceful behavior in a 1v1 fight. Like, you're gonna really do that? Where is the honor in that? Like, what are you doing at that point? Like, that is just disrespectful. So now this guy literally has no dingaling. He spent years building up all his muscles just to have no dingaling. So, like, even if he does get women in the real world after he escapes from prison, he's not gonna be able to do anything. So what was the point of all that? What was the point of building up your muscles? Meanwhile, this gooner over here is gonna be the one getting all the women, because at least he has a dingaling now. No matter how many muscles you have, you're not going to be able to get any women if you don't have a dingaling.
The freezer incident. On January 12th, a 33-year-old man would be taken to the Walker County Jail, confused, malnourished, and sick. His cousin had called for help, hoping that the police would bring an ambulance and give him medical assistance. However, the sheriff's deputies arrived to the scene first, and they reported that the man brandished a weapon and let off a round towards the officers before running into a forest. When they finally apprehended him, he was seen to be malnourished and in a state of total delirium, with his only comments being incoherent babbles about portals in hell. Instead of taking the man to the hospital, the officers would lock him in a cold-looking cell and remove his clothes for whatever reason.
And then they proceeded to brutally diddle him. Instead of actually taking him to the hospital where he would actually be able to get, like, meds. Like, I think he actually needs some sort of, like, meds. Because what is he saying before? He's saying something about, like, portals and fairies and, like, magic and unicorns and all that stuff. I think he's so malnourished at this point that, like, he literally cannot think straight. He needs to go to the hospital so he can actually get, like, food and, like, be hydrated, like, get on, like, an IV drip or something.
From the moment the door clanged shut, the cold began eating at him. It seeped into his bones, turned his skin to goose flesh, and made his teeth chatter until his jaw ached. Each breath fogged in the air like it was Christmas night, and the man began shivering so violently that it hurt. An officer would state that this treatment was fitting, since the man fired a weapon at the officers. Some other jailers even said that the cops should have just fired at him, instead of bringing him back to the jail alive. Days passed without food, warmth, or medical treatment for his mental state, until one day he was finally taken out of the cell. However, it would be for anything but a good reason. Despite being in a freezing cold cell with temperatures that dropped below 30 degrees for nearly a week, officers still thought that these conditions were too comfortable for him. To the man's complete horror, they wanted to lock him in the jail's kitchen freezer. They would rip him out of his cell and tase him so violently that he'd lose his dentures in the process.
Bro, and keep in mind, all of this is purely because he fired a single bullet towards the police, which still, okay, to be fair, that is pretty bad. That could have killed the police. But at the same time, surely just bring him to the jail, book him, like charge him with something, and then send him off. Actually, wait, no, he can't get sent off. Just keep him there for like I don't know, like multiple years. Like, keep him there for like 100 years rather than doing all this to him. Because at this point, he has no clothes still. He's in there butt naked. His dingling and ballsack is probably frozen at this point, and it's probably like shattered, like snapped off already.
They would throw the man in a metal restraint chair, tie him down, and leave him in the freezer. The air inside was biting. Any ounce of heat his body may have maintained before was sapped instantly. His body burned with fever, then chilled again, as if it couldn't decide whether to fight or surrender. The hum of the refrigeration unit filled the silence. His fingers stiffened, his lips turned blue, and the man froze with every second in that chair, feeling like hours. When they moved him back to the holding cell, the floor was littered with trash. He lay there motionless, ribs showing, breath shallow.
Bro, does this guy have some sort of plot armor? So keep in mind, he's been in this like cold cell for 1 week with no food, gets sent to the freezer for how many hours? Like, is that a whole day? And then he gets sent back into the cold cell again, like to finish him off. If this was me, if I was in this situation, I probably would have died like 3 hours after I got put into this freezer, because this is literally like a kitchen grade freezer. And it was butt naked in here as well. Like, keep in mind, he was still butt naked. And I'm pretty sure there was like meat and everything. Like, there probably would have been like food, everything in here. And so if this was me, bro, if this was actually me, like, I would know 100% I would die, whether, you know, in here or like out the cell afterwards. And so while I would be in here, I'd locate all of like the beef, the pork, and all the food, and I'd rub my nutsack all over it, all across the face of all the meat, and then I'd rub a quick one out and release my homemade special sauce all over the meat to marinate it until it just froze solid on it, just so that the prison inmates and like everyone else, like the staff, the police officers, would have a nicely marinated meat to be prepared for whenever they cook it.
A nurse appeared briefly, stood at the doorway, then turned off the light and left him in darkness. Guards passed his cell, some stopping to look, others just walking by. Not one brought him clothes. After enduring 2 weeks of pure horror, the officers took him to a hospital. A human's normal body temp is supposed to be about 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. But when they brought him in, he was only breathing 2 breaths per minute with a pulse that was nearly non-existent, and his body temperature shockingly read 72 degrees Fahrenheit. Doctors tried to warm him up and did their absolute best to push his body back from the edge, but, sadly enough, it was too late. In the official report, officers would lie and say that he was completely fine when he left the jail, and that hypothermia is what caused this outcome. But in truth, they froze him alive. Thankfully, 10 jail staff members would all be tried and charged in relation to this incident. Let situations like these encourage you to know the law and your rights as a civilian well.
But I mean, what are you meant to do if you're in that situation though? Like, despite whether knowing your civilian rights or not, like, if you're in this situation, they tie you up and they chuck you into a freezer. I don't think you're gonna be able to go, well, actually, according to this law, I'm not allowed to be tied up like this and chucked into a freezer. They're just gonna laugh at you and close the door and just keep you in there anyways. They're gonna double the amount of time you're gonna be spending in that freezer. And so even if you do know your rights and everything, how is that gonna save you in this situation? I don't think anything will save you.
Napalm. First, you do enough favors from other prisoners for them to buy you some peanut butter from the commissary. Then you eat up the peanut butter and lick the jar clean and keep it concealed. After that, you steal some sugar from the jail's kitchen and strong cleaning materials like bleach or ammonia. Once you've got all your materials, head back to the kitchen and bribe the prisoner working kitchen duty to have access to stove and pots inside. Then, quickly cook yourself some boiling hot water and slowly pour it into your peanut butter jar so that it doesn't melt and warp the container. Finally, sneak the boiling hot water back to your cell and mix the rest of your ingredients inside of it. And when you see your enemy sitting down to eat his lunch, attack. This concoction is called prison napalm, and it's one of the most dangerous yet common weapons used within US prisons. This horrific mixture splashes onto you and sticks to your skin while burning the living hell out of your body. It's difficult to get off, and it keeps on burning you long after the attack is over because of its stickiness. Hence why it's called prison napalm.
Okay, I'm not gonna lie, I thought this was going to go a different direction when I saw that peanut butter jar. I thought he was gonna pour it onto his balls and just let the prison, like, mental health dog lick it. But then instead, you're gonna go full Walter White and cook up some random potion that happens to be napalm. Didn't they use this in, like, the war and everything? How is it possible to make this in a prison? This sounds like some ChatGPT recipe. Like, I guarantee this is what ChatGPT would tell you to do if you asked it to how to make, like, what is it, napalm in prison. But how would any kitchen staff allow a prisoner to enter the kitchen? Because this is fire. Like, fire, boiling water, isn't that obviously going to be used for a weapon? Like, what else could it be used for? Like, oh, I'm just gonna be heating up my instant noodles using the boiling water. Please let me have boiling water and a fire. Please. Like, of course not. Like, first of all, I don't think any prisoner would have access to instant noodles. And second of all, frick the prisoners. They cannot get anything. They're in here for a reason. They're in here because they committed a crime. If I'm a prison staff, if I'm, like, working in the kitchen, I'm not letting any prisoner, like, use the boiling water, even if they do have instant noodles.
In August 2013, a 24-year-old man would be sentenced to 20 years of prison for mistakenly targeting an innocent young girl in an act of violence that would tragically be the cause of her passing. With the community absolutely enraged about this, people outside of the prison would put a $13,000 bounty on his head for the prisoners to deal away with him. After a series of unsuccessful attacks, the man would be placed in a protection cell with 2 other inmates. But horrifically enough, at around 11 p.m., the man would prepare to go to bed when one of the inmates in the cell quickly pinned him down to the floor, while the other magically revealed a steaming hot concoction of, yep, you guessed it, prison napalm. What makes this case terrifying is that the men didn't just throw and splash the napalm on him, like how it's normally supposed to be used. They began slowly pouring the boiling hot liquid down his throat, causing severe injury to the man's internals. Afterward, they poured the rest of it on his face, eyes, lips, and ears. Officers would quickly intervene, but upon glimpse of the man, they would report that he bared a horrifyingly similar resemblance to a real-life zombie.
Jesus Christ. But at the same time, how are you being in a protective cell with two other people? Isn't the whole point of like a protective cell to be with nobody else? Like even with Epstein, wasn't he in a cell by himself? Maybe? I didn't even know. How can you possibly be in a protective cell if there are two other people in there? But maybe it's just an issue of that, like maybe there aren't enough cells in the prisons, and so you have to like, there's no choice but to like share it with other people. But putting a $13,000 bounty on this guy, isn't that illegal? Like can't these guys get like prosecuted for it? Like these people are the cause of his death, technically. But this guy goes full John Wick protecting himself, and so I guess he really is John Wick. No, like nobody can kill him. But then how do these two people get like the communication, like the message that like they're meant to unalive this guy for a $13,000 bounty? And so I guess the moral of the story is to stay in school, kids. Do not go to jail. Do not do any crime. Otherwise you will get brutally diddled in prison.